Good day, everyone. I'm your host, Lee Judge, and welcome to today's roundtable discussion entitled Visual IVR, Have We Reached the Future of Customer Service? Today we have gathered a panel of industry experts to discuss and define what Visual IVR is and the benefits of this technology for organizations worldwide. Our panelists today include Adrian Swinscoe, Customer Service Experience Strategist. Adrian is a customer experience strategist and writer and has been advising leaders on strategy, marketing, and client experience for the last 20 years. He runs a popular blog and podcast series and is a Forbes contributor. Also, we have Art Rosenberg, Unified Communication Analyst. Art has been a well-known independent writer, speaker, industry analyst, and consultant in the business communications, having written thought-leading articles for leading technology publications such as Datamation, Business Communications Review, Data Pro, Telephony, and Voice Processing. Also, join us in a moment, we hope, Dick Bucci, Chief Analyst and of Polaris Associates. Dick is founder and principal of Polaris Associates, where he specializes in contact center technologies. Dick has authored 13 in-depth market research reports on workforce optimization, applications, and numerous articles and white papers. Moderating today's discussion is Jacada's CMO, Steve Herlocker. As a note, following the presentation, there will be a brief question and answer session, so please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A window at any time. Also, as a note, to respect the privacy of our attendees, only your name will appear in the attendee window. So let's begin. I will now turn the discussion over to our moderator, Steve Herlocker. Steve?
He's having a few technical difficulties. If he doesn't, we'll work with Adrian Art and we'll have the discussion. So today we're here to talk about Visual IVR, and exciting topic for us. You know, we've had the opportunity to talk to a number of CIOs, a number of VPs of customer care across multiple verticals, and pretty much everybody agrees visual and visual connectivity is the way of the future, whether in the mobile space and mobile apps, or even in the web realm and web self-service or social. So it's a huge trend we see unfolding. We've got a good panel today to discuss it. We've got a couple of questions prepared for them to go through. And we also will take questions from you. So please put your questions in the chat window, as Lee said. We'll address those at the end. And to get started here, I thought I'm going to take just a few minutes. We'll look at the agenda slide here. I'll just take a few minutes to make sure we all understand Visual IVR. I'm not going to go in depth about it, but I am going to talk just a few minutes so that people understand the concept and the baseline. Certainly our panelists may expand on that a bit. But to get started, I thought I'd start with setting a baseline, the traditional voice IVR. You know, it's an incredibly valuable part of your organization. It is a significant anchor to the care and to the connectivity into a care organization. It certainly provides significant benefits to you, and those are things that you need to retain. But it's not always the best experience from a customer perspective. A lot of times they'll zero out because they're looking for the fastest path to get to an agent. They can be annoyed listening to long menus, and there are ways to resolve that. You can certainly invest in speech and speech recognition technologies. There are a number of other things you can do to make IVRs effective, but you are in essence limited by the keyboard input here, or the keypad input with an IVR. So the concept of Visual IVR is really stepping beyond that and saying, let's take this to the native mode that the person is connecting with you in. Use the native device, make it visual. Go ahead and take advantage of the capabilities there. And that can be as simple as just scanning menus. Instead of listening for 2 or 3 minutes, you can just quickly choose the options you want and quickly get to the person you want to talk to and get to the right person the first time. It also can involve maybe a bit more complex things than you would do in a traditional IVR. It can involve even some additional self-service capability, updating email addresses, collecting asset tags, really taking that first piece of information that an agent might ask you of in a call and collecting that ahead of time and making the interaction faster. So it's a better customer experience. It's a better way to engage. And throughout this flow, of course, you can give the customer options. You can give them options to choose a callback. You can give them options to chat with you. So it enables customer choice to a large degree and lets them engage in the method and the mode that they want to. The next concept we really wanted to get across from a Visual IVR perspective is, where would you see it engage? Where would you use Visual IVR? And that's going to be one of the key topics we'll talk about today. And so really we look at it in two modes. Today in most industries, quite a few people will go and attempt self-service. In some cases 50, 60, 70%. Unfortunately, the reality is that usually less than half of them actually find their answer in that self-service world, and they abandon that transaction. And when they do that today, we tend to put them back into a voice IVR. We send them to a contact us page, or we give them a phone number and drop them back into an IVR. And so what we're suggesting is bring a visual IVR, bring visual connectivity into this equation. Remember everything they did on the website. Remember who they are. Remember what they were looking at. Maybe ask a few more questions if you need to, because maybe you can answer the problem a little more directly. And you certainly may want a little more information to connect them to the right agent. But then do that and connect them very seamlessly. Don't have them start over from scratch again. So the agent knows what they were doing on the website, and the customer doesn't have to go back through an IVR experience and start over. So that's one environment where we see visual IVR being useful. And then the second are for those that are really coming to your contact us page or looking at their bill, and they're calling directly in. And in that case, we really believe that visual IVR can be a benefit in the sense that when they come into the IVR, give them a choice. Ask them if they might want to engage in a visual mode. Give them an option to come back and use the device that they're on and go through a more natural flow, and offer them maybe faster connectivity if you do that. There is a better way to connect with us, if you will. So really a quick overview of visual IVR. Just wanted to set the stage so that people understood, one, why we call it visual IVR. We do see this as the visual connectivity model that can displace and be a better way for people to achieve what they do with an IVR today. And that it's a bridge between those digital domains, that web self-service, social self-service domain, the mobile self-service, and creating that bridge into the contact center, if you will. Okay? So with that, we'll start the roundtable discussion today. We have Art and Adrian with us. We've got a couple of questions prepared for them. We also have some polls for the audience. So Lee, if you would put the first poll up, it goes with the first question that we have for the analysts. And in this poll, we're going to ask your opinion here. We'll give you a few minutes to answer it, and then Lee will post the results while we're getting the answers from our guests here. And that way we can weave that information into the dialogue and into the discussion. All right, we have the poll up. And really asking you all for your opinion on where and when do you think this kind of visual connectivity or visual IVR capability will be adopted. And while you're answering that, we'll go into the first question. And the first question we prepared, we're going to ask Art to answer it first. Who do we think will adopt this visual IVR capability, and in what scenarios might they use it? So Art, if you will, go ahead and give us your feedback on this one.
Well, any kind of organization or business, whatever that is providing services to a community of users, and let's call them consumers, customers, or whatever in particular, most people would like to be able to do things themselves. They like to have control. So self-service is not something alien to them. It's just that you got to make it easy for them. And the kind of things that they would want to do themselves are in actually three categories. One is they want to be able to get information without having to ask somebody. And they want to use natural language, and not be adept at any particular technology. So they like to talk or type or whatever. The main thing is they want the information. They want to hear it, and sometimes, but mostly they'd want to look at it, especially if it's voluminous information. They would also like to be able to perform transactions, make a transfer of funds, say, for a bank themselves, without having to go to the bank and without having to ask somebody to do it for them. So there's a number, and healthcare, of course, is another area where people want to be able to do things directly themselves, and they might even want to get into dealing with a physician without going to the office, and they may very well want to be on camera video so they can show the doctor what the problem is. The third thing they may want to do, or be able to have done from the service provider, whoever it is they want to be notified when something happens. They don't want to have to check on their bank account all the time, but if there's something wrong and there's going to be overdrawn, then perhaps perhaps what they want is, let me know when there's a problem. So don't wait for me to figure it out and check on it. Let me know that something has to be done, and then we'll get into it. And last but not least, all these things that they want to be able to do automatically and by themselves, when they run into a problem that they can't handle, they don't understand, they made a mistake, whatever it is, they want to be able to click for assistance. And from that perspective, they want the choice of a kind of assistance, because now they are all carrying personalized mobile devices that are multimodal, which means they can communicate with people in their choice of modes, and it could be voice conversation, chat, or even a video conversation. So they want all that kind of flexibility in handling their issues directly wherever possible, self-service, or when they need assistance, they want the option. And when they're mobile, sometimes they can't do it right away, so they may simply say, hey, it's not critical, but when you get a chance, get back to me. And this is where we have virtual queuing coming into play for a real-time connection. It doesn't have to be immediate. They wait, in line. So all that flexibility is what end users want. And they choose how they want, what they want, and this applies to any kind of service that a provider is going to offer.
Excellent. Thanks, Art. I tend to agree with you. I think you're right, and I think the audience agrees that flexibility and user choice really will drive this. So it looks like we see a majority of people saying that people will want to use this. It will become a standard, or at least a significant way of communicating. So Adrian, I'll hand it to you to answer the same question, if you would please give us your viewpoint. Certainly you're bringing in some viewpoints from Europe, and you may have some different insight into how people could use it or how they might want to communicate.
Okay. Well, thanks. First of all, thank you for inviting me along to be a part of the roundtable. It's a real pleasure. What I would say is I would sort of agree with Art, but I would also disagree, and that's as per my want, I guess. But I would guess that the first thing I think I would say is that because this is new technology, I think that the early adopters will be the ones that have the users or the customers that are probably more tech savvy and more tech mature in the early days. Whilst it may be a really useful technology, it sometimes might just be a little bit too new for some people, and therefore it takes a while for people to adopt it. However, I can see it being really useful, and there's a couple of scenarios that I was thinking about in terms of how and when it could be of real use. One would be, for example, if you had a customer that was out and about and all they had was their mobile device, and they had a problem with a particular thing. Maybe say it was they were in their car and their car broke down, for example. Now, if you think about the challenge of trying to look up a number to try and call the breakdown company, and trying to do it on your phone, but then also having to think about getting the right number, writing the number down, or is there a click to call button? I think that sort of scenario could fit really, really well with a Visual IVR, because actually it could be, you could link it through to why are you calling, what's happened, please describe it, link it, enable GPS location services on your phone so we can identify where you are and then match you up with our nearest breakdown truck, for example, as a way of getting better service and linking up all the data that, say, a breakdown provider would need to be able to service that customer as quickly as possible. So that's one scenario, because it makes the ease of calling and providing all the right sort of data as easy as possible. And then the second example reminds me of Art talked about health service. Now, in the UK, we have this service called NHS Direct. And it's a web-based, but also phone-based service. And one of the things that they do is to try and reduce the load on people showing up at hospitals and saying, I've got this pain type of thing. There's a bit of a self-diagnostic process that they go through. And I think the Visual IVR could be a really good way of trying to take people through that diagnostic process so they get to the right answer, or the right kind of person to speak to, or maybe make the right sort of appointment, depending on their diagnosis of the issue at hand, as it were. So whilst I think it's it sounds like and feels like a really great piece of technology, and I can see where it can be applied. I think that its application will probably be better led by people that are a bit more technically mature and a bit more tech savvy than the general mass market. I hope that helps.
Oh, excellent, Adrian. I think two great points. Your healthcare example is great. I would say that I've also talked to some people in the healthcare space, and what I hear then also as cases or scenarios would be that with either proactive care, or your wellness plans, if you will, and reminding people to do that, and maybe they need to call in and ask a question about how to properly perform an exercise or do a self-diagnosis, as you said, and then follow-up aftercare if you're in some type of rehabilitation and you need a personalized plan given to you that you may need to communicate back and forth with your trainer to go through and go through that recovery sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'd like to just add one point of how the non-technical person can access this technology a little easier. Amazon came up with their Mayday button on their devices, and you can look at that analogy that hey, somebody starts with I got a problem, and so they push this Mayday button, and they not necessarily get to a live person first, but they get to a menu and say, well, what's your problem? Say it or describe it or select it or whatever, and that's how they get into the loop. Just make it easy.
Nope, that's a great point. And so the second thing from yours and Adrian's point I was going to summarize is exactly that, adoption and bringing people into the fold, if you will. And as you said, take away the complexity on a contact us page or in the contact us process you have somebody go through on your web, and make it very easy. Make a Mayday button that says, talk to us, and walk the person through what they want to talk to you about. So I think it's a bit of both. It's a bit early adopter, but there is a bit of educating people and maybe incenting them. Even talked to some early adopting type companies that have said, look, for very early customers, if we want to transition them from phone to this visual experience, maybe we need to leave the phone engaged and not talk them through the experience. Don't read menus to them, but just give them voice prompts that give them comfort that we're moving forward. Just let them know, yes, we're getting you towards connecting with an agent, but first I need your social security number and here's why, please enter it. So there's these types of scenarios as well that can help people migrate into the technology and help educate the user base. So some great points. I think we can move on to the second poll, which will work with the second question here. So Lee, if you would bring that poll up, please. And that second poll, we're looking at and talking about, do we think we're going to actually shift traffic away from IVRs? Are we going to impact the deployment of the IVR environment or not? And to go with that with our guests, we have a little bit of a leading question, but it was something that we talked about in setting up the roundtable. And that is, if you bring Visual IVR and you do some intelligent management of those calls and give people intelligent choice, whether it's callback or chatback or these types of capabilities, does that really fundamentally turn the world up on its head, and does it kill the traditional IVR and queue experience and move it more to the customer's realm to communicate how and when they want with the company, yet still do it reasonably efficiently and not completely destroy the orderly management of a contact center, if you will. So I may have extended that question out a bit, but Adrian, if you want to take a shot at that one first, please.
So my answer is probably not necessarily. It doesn't, because I think that actually, again, if I come back to thinking about it from the customer's perspective and different demographics and different people's preferences, what I would probably see, or I envisage seeing, is that rather than the Visual IVR being the death knell for the traditional IVR, I actually think what will happen is that traditional IVR will be compelled to get better, and what you'll end up seeing is you'll probably see a convergence of Visual IVR and traditional IVR in a way that it becomes, you have a voice option but also a visual option, and they sort of complement each other, if that makes sense. And I think, because I do think that experience and use will build trust in the Visual IVR sort of process, because I think that there's a number of people that adopt or go down the traditional IVR process, but they drop out because they get so frustrated with the process, and they drop out because they try and do the callback type of approach, or pressing 9 for it to arrange a callback, and that doesn't really happen, and that's possibly to do with process and technology integration. But so I think it will take time for things to improve. But what I can see is that the impact of the visual IVR will make traditional IVR get better, and you might actually see a convergence of the two. Does that make sense?
Oh, excellent point. Art, if you would like to go ahead and comment on that same topic.
Well, in general, I agree with that, and especially when you think about people being mobile. In other words, they're using mobile devices. They don't, go to a desktop or use their, wired phone, but they're now more accessible and therefore can initiate contact for assistance wherever they are. So the thing is that they will be in circumstances where sometimes in a noisy environment and they can't hear. They may be sitting in a meeting and they don't want to talk, so that you need the flexibility of input and output to be whatever is necessary for the environment that they're in. So the flexibility of using speech and input or output and visual input-output should be there, and in that sense I certainly agree. The other thing that I wanted to mention also is the efficiency of getting a live assistance. When you make a phone call, they know your phone number, and so they know who you are, but they don't know what you've been doing. They don't know what your problem is. It's blind. And so starting with like the Mayday button, if you will, if you start with a click for assistance from within something that you're trying to do yourself, whatever that may be. You start off with, I'm looking for information, or I want to do this transaction, and then they say, I need assistance. Now you have context you never had before, which means that the people who you're trying to contact can be more intelligent and more understanding, and you don't waste all the time. Who are you? What's your problem? And all that kind of garbage.
Nope, perfect. So a better transition, if you will. And I think looking at the poll, people tend to agree voice isn't going away anytime soon. There are certainly those that prefer a traditional voice conversation. And as Adrian pointed out, it's probably an evolutionary experience as the two come together. But again, good topic to visit and have a good discussion about. So excellent feedback, you two. Appreciate that. As we set up for the third, we have our final poll. We'll do a poll for the first 3 questions here. And here we're really looking at speech recognition, because certainly as you look at the technologies that are available, natural speech, natural language, avatar-driven experiences on the website and on the mobile, Siri, of course, and Google Voice, are certainly viable ways to start a customer service experience or a connectivity experience if it's sales. So we really want to talk for a few minutes about, all right, what is the difference between these? And this poll may come back with an obvious answer in the end, but it gives you all a chance to give your feedback in this environment. Are we all becoming app-centric and visual, or is there a future for these speech-type environments? So with that one, Art, if you would like to weigh in on, is there a conflict between this visual navigation and speech recognition, or do they coexist? What's the benefits of both? Where should we use them?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you really have to think of worst-case situation for the end user who is mobile and they're in environments, or they have preferences, whatever is easiest for them. You really have to allow for, because it's easier to speak than to type, and it's easier to read than to listen. And so you want the combination of the two to be available and let the end user decide what's best at the moment. And they should be able to change as their environment changes. If they're driving or they're moving around, walking, and things suddenly, you want to have that kind of flexibility of choice by the end user as to how they want to be making their inputs and how they want to see the outputs. And that's should be flexible. And user's choice depending on the circumstances, not predetermined, and this is the only way it gets done.
Nope, perfect. So if I'm sitting on my couch with my tablet, maybe I'll prefer visual, but if I'm actually standing by the phone or working on my cell phone, maybe I'll engage with some type of speech initiation. Good insight there. Adrian, any comments you would add to that as well?
I mean, I would tend to agree with Art. I think that the choice is going to be a function of two things. One is a preference, but also completely based on context. So if you're out and about and you're mobile, and you're walking along the street, or you're in a reasonably, sort of not necessarily noisy place, but in a place where there's a degree of ambient noise, that can cause some real problems with speech recognition, and therefore the visual option may tend to may be better. And so I would say that it is all going to be about context, but it is also going to be about preference, and it's a balance things. And then companies are going to have to make a choice. Do I offer the two, or do I just offer the one, and what are the consequences of the choices that I make?
Nope, excellent. And I think the one piece I've heard in addition to that is really the cost-benefit return of speech. It can be expensive to tune a speech environment, and if you don't have a relatively homogeneous population, if I have a lot of different dialects and accents and these types of things, it can be difficult or cost prohibitive to create that natural speech environment. So no disagreement. I completely agree with Art's first statement that there are times I like to be able to speak, and there's times I would like to be able to select or visually navigate. And I certainly would want those options. I think there's also the other side of the equation of when can companies afford to offer both and afford to offer a sort of a fully tailored natural speech type of approach.
I'd like to make one additional comment. And you know, we usually look at things on the end user, the customer is initiating the contact. But what's really happening also is that automated processes, business processes, are also initiating contact. As I think I may have mentioned, like your bank tells you your account is down, and so you're going to get notifications. And what should the mode of the notification be? Again, it's got to be under the control of the recipient and their circumstances. So, you know, it could be something that vibrates, it could be something that beeps, it's something that talks to you, or some combination, whatever it is. But the end user has to have the control of the interface based on their situation. And it's whether they're initiating something or somebody's trying to contact you. It's got to be a two-way street.
Yep, two great points. I think certainly I've heard from a banking example, fraud notification is something you probably would want to do visually instead of speech, because you'll have to go through some type of positive authentication first. And then also, I think I heard you say, Art, personalization. It isn't really just the preference I set last month in the web portal. It's what is my current situation, what is my current presence, what's my current status, what device am I using. Have a smart network behind me that delivers the type of interaction that's aware of where I am and what I'm doing, right?
Right.
Steve, can I make an additional point? And this is possibly a little bit left field, but probably worthy of sharing, if that's okay.
No, I love it.
So here's the thing. We think about whether we call it multi-channel or omni-channel or a proliferation of service channels that are available to companies now, and that number is probably set to expand over time, and where you have the phone, you have email, you have web chat, you have social media, you have forums, you have et cetera, et cetera. I guess one of the dimensions I think that companies may have to consider, and also consider the impacts of what they offer on their customers, is this idea of, the idea of tyranny of choice. And if you give people too much choice, it can have a negative impact on the engagement that you have with your customers. So I think that my point is that companies should think very, very carefully about what channels they offer their customers, what fits with them and what fits with their customers, and actually, you don't actually have to offer all the channels to all of your customers all of the time.
I agree with that, and it ties into personalization, where the choice is there if they want it and need it, but you don't give them a whole menu. What do you want? You let them do things naturally.
So if there is this visual IVR concept, it should be reactive to where you are, what your long-term preferences are, and what your current situation is I think the way I heard this all come out, and give me intelligent choices at the point at which I'm actually touching in and communicating with the company, right? Or the company's reaching out to me.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have one more prepared question, then we'll go to some of the questions from the audience here. So we don't have a poll for this last one. We didn't want to poll everybody to death. So on the final one here, we really wanted to say, can the fact that we're now engaging a visual experience, maybe collecting more data, more complex data, we are keeping you in a visual domain, is there an ability now to be more effective from a self-service perspective? And I think the obvious answer is yes, I can collect an email address and you can update your email address now. But I think the deeper question to look at is, can you blend this into the self-service world and really make self-service more effective? So I would throw that one to you first, Art.
Absolutely, because as I mentioned, it's a two-way street. You want information or you want to do a transaction, and so once you get into that level of interaction, the visual part of information is going to be a lot more efficient, easier, and so on than listening to information. So if you can do things more efficiently for input, whatever that is, as well as for output, the combination, and it'll be flexible and user's choice depending on their environment, circumstance, and so on. You are now molding the interaction to the tune of what an individual end user needs and wants. And so when you say self-service, it's a question of how to do it, and for input, how to do it on the output side, and you do the most efficient, effective way and easiest way for it to get done by an end user.
No, perfect. Absolutely agree. Adrian, anything you would add to that one?
I would agree with Art that yes, Visual IVR has the potential to make self-service much more effective. However, I do think that there's a lot of work that needs to get done to make that happen, and that is going to require much greater level of information on existing and future knowledge bases, use of data analytics, customer understanding, all of those different things to match, like what Art was talking about before, sort of human search and sort of human language queries to knowledge bases, such that when somebody's going through a Visual IVR, then you can be popping up, potential answers and potential solutions to their kind of problem based on what you know about your existing customer base and also what you know about them. That's easier said than done and requires a lot of kind of work, but it can be done, and it can make the whole self-service experience much better.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that because there is an awful lot of work to be done to make any kind of online application use case perfected, if you will. You have to get down to that level of issue or problem or information level that an end user is going to want, and make it easy for them to get what they want by themselves without tripping over anything and being succinct and to the point. So the interface needs a lot of fine-tuning, depending on the use case, depending on the end user personalization. It's not there automatically. So you've opened up a can of worms, so to speak. A lot of work to be done.
No, I completely agree. And in fact, from the conversations I've had in a couple of implementations, it really has come down to, if somebody has reached the point that they've hit the panic button and say, I need to communicate with you, maybe you shouldn't push them back too heavily into a self-service. The same kind of thing you would do in an IVR, typical, obvious, maybe self-serve cases. But once they've chosen to enter a queue and they've chosen to wait, why disengage that Visual IVR experience? They're holding. While they're holding, go ahead and try and help them, because there's a decent chance you may get through, and by providing some content for the high runner cases, again, being careful about what you'd offer. I completely agree with the level of effort in getting it right. But present that information when it makes sense and when you can while they're on hold, and maybe let them get through and answer their own question. So, Dick, I see you've joined us. I think you got through your technology problems. We're unfortunately making it to the end of the questions. I would invite you, anything you would raise as a comment, maybe generally about adoption of Visual IVR, and then maybe more specifically about this, self-service effectiveness point. So welcome, and if you could add any comments to that, please.
Well, I've been listening as I've been trying to get into the system here. I can't say that I've caught up with everything, but I would echo many of the comments made earlier about who would be the likely user of IVR, and I think it would be people that have an immediate urgent need would be the primary candidates. I'm thinking particularly about sales personnel, service personnel that frequently have to check in with the management or with the company as to whether or not they made their sales call or made their delivery. Other adopters would probably be travelers and millennials, good applications, insurance claims, making restaurant reservations. As far as where we go with Visual IVR, well, IVR has gone through a number of evolutions from touchtone to speech, natural language speech, and now Visual IVR, which may be considered part of a continuum moving forward. I think it offers greater opportunities, greater access, certainly leverages the tremendous utilization of mobile devices that we have today. And I think it will become adopted, but probably not an overnight sensation like many technologies in our industry. It'll take a little bit of time, but it certainly will make the interaction more pleasant, and I think leverage one of the important things that companies are trying to do today, and that's distinguish themselves from their peers, and they do that by providing a superior level of service.
Yep, great point. You can bring differentiation into the equation and offer some innovative ways for people to communicate and engage with you.
Yeah, I'm very sorry about the difficulty getting in. I didn't have a chance to give an introduction, but maybe I should say now that I'm an analyst, and one of my jobs that I do is try to understand where the world is going. I look at trends, very global, macro, micro trends, and try to bring that down to the contact center interface. My clients are major corporations that produce products for the contact center industry, including IVRs. And one of the couple important trends, but one that we talked about earlier is this need to differentiate, and service is the one thing that cannot be easily replicated by competitors. You can easily match prices or even come up with similar products, but you can't always replicate service. And so I think that's an important driver. And also, I think this whole issue of personalization, I don't think we had a chance to get into that yet, but we're in a world now where we're looking at people as individuals, and the more that you can customize that interface, the more important it is to maintain that customer loyalty. I just want to make those couple of points, and then, sorry again for the interruption.
No, perfect, Dick, thank you. And the personalization piece we talked a bit about, but it is a great point that you now can create an experience that weaves in all of that content about who that person is and what you know about them, and maybe make that part of the connectivity and service experience. So it is a requirement today, I think, of any channel scenario, of any engagement that you're offering. Like you said, it is about the sort of one-to-one experience. All right, so we're just about on time, and we've made it through the questions. At this point, Lee, we'll hand it to you. You've been collating the questions from the audience. If you would like to throw one up, then we'll determine who should handle it.
Okay, great. So as a reminder again, we want to now address your questions that attendees have already typed into our Q&A window. For those we're not able to answer today, we will address those to you directly via email after the roundtable. So let's go to the Q&A window now, and I have some questions, Steve, and you can moderate them to our panelists. The first question is, when we position Visual IVR, customers often ask on how this is different from a standard web page. How do they respond to that?
So, Dick, do you want to take a first shot at answering that question? Or you?
Well, I think there's some significant differences. The core of the question is, what's the distinction between self-service on a web page versus self-service on Visual IVR? Well, there are many differences. Obviously, portability is a strong favor point for the mobile or Visual IVR interaction. I think the robustness might be a little bit greater on the computer because you've got more space and a larger screen to deal with, and you don't have to worry about light or factors like that. But I think they're really kind of complementary. The Visual IVR is terrific for people on the go, and it leverages the fact that in this world we now have something like 6 billion mobile devices, many of them smartphones. In fact, we have more of those than we have people. So I think if you're not sitting in front of your computer, this is a great way to go. I think the Visual IVR is probably best suited for direct transactions, making travel reservations, for example, restaurant reservations. The more complex things such as selecting purchases and doing complex financial transactions might be better suited to the traditional computer interface.
Okay, thank you, Dick.
Hold on, one comment to that. So I completely agree, Dick. I think one other difference I would call out, and maybe this goes into the evolutionary concept. Certainly we played off of the concept of IVR evolving into Visual IVR. Certainly there also is click to chat, click to call, and there's the concept of connectivity from a web self-service perspective. And so you could think of this as an evolution of that, and deepening the connectivity between traditional contact center and customer care and the self-service presence and self-service channels. So to me, Visual IVR is about the connectivity and breaking down the silos and then, as Dick said, doing it effectively and efficiently in the device that you're on. So I think that's the one comment I would add. Sorry, Lee, go ahead and throw up the next question, please.
Can I make one quick comment?
Art?
Yeah, the one thing I would add is, and especially to Dick's comment about mobility, as I say, the applications, it's a two-way street, and you can get notifications wherever you are, and that takes you into the interaction that you're going to get, and that closes the loop more efficiently and easily for an end user.
So you're thinking of proactive care there, Art? You're thinking of reaching out maybe with an SMS and offering people a visible
or it's not waiting for the end user to go online and do things and with a mobile device. But the fact that they're mobile and more accessible, they now can be notified about things and becomes a two-way street.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I hadn't considered that, but it does bring that two-way concept, which you can't do through a computer, and that's terrific for people on the go. And we haven't talked about first contact resolution, but that's one of the primary drivers of customer satisfaction. And to the extent that you can get a quick return and get that problem solved right away, that does certainly drive customer care.
Okay, we've got a couple more great questions we want to make sure we get in and respect the time of our attendees that have joined today. Our next question is, how will I get my customers to adopt this?
So I'll take a shot at that one first. We've had a number of conversations with different companies, and it really is this focus on, one, incenting and educating people, and two, making it easy. So I think Art's example of the panic button, making it obvious, making it direct, and making it the primary connectivity methodology from a web presence is certainly one way to introduce it. And from an adoption perspective, we've seen people that truly enjoy that experience versus having to peck around and guess whether commercial sales, retail sales, or indirect sales is the appropriate phone number they should call when looking at a contact us page. And the second is, again, I think educating and introducing people in the voice IVR environment and offering them this visual engagement methodology, and then maybe offering a carrot that they get priority handling in a queue if they were to take advantage of the new visual connectivity methodology. So that's my 2 cents on that one. Anybody on the panel? I'll open it to you guys. Adrian, Art, Dick, if you'd like to expand on that.
Steve, can I jump in here a second? Please. Because I think there's a point here that is related back to the first question about how is it different from a standard web page. But related to your point around this, how do we get customers to adopt it? I think there's a real opportunity here for firms that are engaging with their customers that they're delivering sort of mobile apps to them. Say for example, you have you're dealing with your bank, and you have the bank's mobile app on your mobile phone, and it allows you to sign in securely, but also to make transfers and to do different things on your phone. But if you can integrate also the Visual IVR technology to that, I think that there can be it can really enhance the experience, both from a self-service and also from a targeted customer service perspective. And I think that might actually also drive a large amount of the adoption, because it becomes like a value add type of benefit, as it were.
This is Dick. I'll add to that this is a tremendous marketing opportunity for companies that want to build brand loyalty. For example, you've all seen that advertisement where the little Geico lizard is poking around on his smartphone trying to check whether or not I paid his bill and that type of thing. Expand that application to include maybe reporting on an accident or something. You collect all the data necessary. Or if you're a hotel chain and you want to encourage your customers to continue to book with you, provide it as an app. Just say, here, there's a free app, but of course it's far more robust than what you would get from a traditional app, because you can do more with it. But that way it becomes an extension of the company's brand, and that drives the adoption, rather than having people ask for this. I guess more got to be more of a push than a pull.
Perfect. So I'll go ahead. We do have quite a few questions outstanding, which is great. So we'll hold on that for that one. Lee, if you want to throw the next question up, please.
Okay, so let's see. This should be our last question, so we could respect time of our attendees. We're going short on time. Let's see. The next question is, if an organization is interested in Visual IVR but doesn't have mechanism in place for necessary cross-channel data integration to drive personalization, what's the recommendation for a quick solution that can be grown into a long-term data management strategy?
I can make a quick comment about getting the flexibility of bringing a lot of things together, and that has to do with the cloud. Getting information into the cloud really opens the door to greater access to mobile devices and also greater integrations. Everything that you need to have things work smoothly together is going to become now cloud-based. Could be private cloud, hybrid, or public. It makes no difference depending on who you're dealing with. But the cloud implementations is bringing a closure for integrations between information, contact with people, and so on. And it also includes the option for making a connection, say in healthcare especially, with a video connection, not just voice.
Excellent feedback, Art. Anybody else have a comment on that? All right, I would say to that question, if you don't have the personalization infrastructure in place, then it is always best to start collecting the customer preferences, start to collect their history, etc. Start to build a quote-unquote CRM view of them, and make sure that CRM is structured not necessarily around your company and your company process, but around the customer, how they interface with you, the questions they ask, etc. Then you've got that personalization information in sort of a natural mode, if you will. It's a little broader, I think, than a Visual IVR question. But I think the key thing is you have to start the initiative and you have to start collecting that information. Just do it intelligently so that it's available across the channels. You may not have it used ubiquitously across the channels initially, but please don't create another silo. Start creating it, start using it in a multi-channel or omni-channel way as quickly as you can. All right, Lee, I think that was. I'm sorry?
Well, we have one more quick question I think we can answer before we wrap up, and it's very, very keen to Visual IVR. And the question is, do you need an app on the smartphone, or does Visual IVR just pop up when a customer calls?
So I think that's a two-part question. At least with our implementation, no, you don't need an app. It can be mobile web, and it can be regular desktop-based web, HTML4, HTML5, or native app. We've also talked to individuals about actually putting it on devices, on kiosks, on TVs, on set-top boxes, etc. So I don't think we should constrain the concept of Visual IVR to being a particular technology. It's really omni-channel and reaching out across all these different devices and environments and giving somebody a consistent way to connect and a personalized way to connect. At least my view. I guess I'll throw it out to Art and Dick and Adrian. Any closing comments you have on that one?
That's a good point, and it's one of the things that is going to be key, that the interface is the only thing that you want to give to the mobile devices, for example. You don't want to treat it like a PC because then you got security issues, and you want to keep secure the information somewhere else, not on the device that could be lost or stolen. So having, in a sense, a dumb phone, not completely dumb, but just an interface device, not for content, not for applications, because those are the things that can be in the cloud and are easily accessible and can be changed and updated and integrated. Don't put it into the phone, because then you're making it into a PC.
I'll add to that. I think the point was well taken about a multi-channel approach. We talked earlier about personalization, and personalization is a little difficult to do on a small screen and strictly a touch tone interface. It can be done very well through speech. So I could visualize an application, for say a travel application, where we start out making a plane reservation, but then the question comes up, well, maybe I need a hotel, maybe I need a rental car as well. And it gets more and more complex for the screen. Well, then you could evolve into a natural language speech with the speech actually in the accent or male or female to try and personalize to the end user, and they will leverage past knowledge about travel patterns, loyalty cards, that type of thing. And in effect, you've got a very robust self-service that may traverse different channels, but it solves the customer's problem at a lower cost than having a human interface.
Excellent. Completely agree, Dick. All right. So I think we had a few more questions outstanding, but we don't really have time to take them. As Lee said, we certainly will answer those and get them back to you. We'll get the feedback from the panelists as well in those answers. So I do appreciate everybody's time. I think we had a great conversation about Visual IVR and visual connectivity and where to use it, when to use it. I think generally we heard that it is an evolving trend that consumers are demanding, and it is something that we all need to consider as long as we do it intelligently, offer it at the right point, and do it in a personalized fashion. So I want to thank the panelists again. I think it was a great conversation. Thank you all for joining, and thank you for giving us your feedback. Lee, do you want to close up with any logistics here?
Well, yeah, once again, thank you, Steve, and thanks to Adrian, Arthur, and Dick for joining us today. And for all those who participated in the roundtable discussion, you had some great questions. We appreciate it. We'll respond to those we weren't able to address. Once you exit the event, you'll see a brief sign-off survey. So please, we ask that you complete this and give us some feedback on the event. A replay of the discussion will be available shortly on our website, so please visit us soon at www.jacada.com. Again, thanks for attending, and have a wonderful day.